Lori, could you share what are the compliance considerations for the interactive process?
Yeah. So the interactive process, just to, we've talked a little bit about the ADA and the PWFA. So it is a process required under both, and it involves a timely, good faith conversation with the employee to identify potential accommodations for that disability or pregnancy related limitation. So from a compliance standpoint, a few key considerations. Timeliness. So first of all, an employer has to act promptly once they're aware, or they should be aware of a need for an accommodation. So they can't lag on this. They can't put it on the back burner because, in the meantime, this is impacting the employee's ability to do their job. They've got to act promptly. The next thing that, it's one of those kind of amorphous concepts, but the employer has to engage in a good faith process. They have to work together to explore options and not have a default no. They can't say, we don't do this, we don't do that, this isn't our policy, we'll never do this. So a failure to engage and have that conversation can be a violation. And then along with that is the idea of an individualized assessment. So every request has to be evaluated based on the employee's specific job and the specific limitation. So, it might be okay in some situations to say, you can't have a chair. Let's say, for example, you have an employer who their entire job is, walking, and there's no way to do the job without walking. Maybe that would be an undue hardship in that particular situation to allow an employee to have a chair. But there might be another employee who stands at a cash register and a chair would be fine there. So, having to set specific bright line rules is just not okay. The other issue, of course, is medical information. This is one that comes up a lot. So under the ADA, an employer can request reasonable medical documentation when the need for leave isn't obvious. But under the PWFA, employers have less leeway. Now, also, if the need for leave is obvious and the limitation is obvious, you've got an employee who, let's say, she's extremely pregnant and the uniform that you've provided for her doesn't fit. Doesn't take a genius to figure that one out. So you're not going to be able to ask for medical documentation to make that proof. But under the PWFA, there's other things beyond that where the employer cannot ask for medical documentation. So things like common accommodations, like more restroom breaks, things like that. An employer just can't ask for documentation. So there's actually a whole list under the PWFA. So employers who are dealing with this want to make sure that they dig into that and understand all the different things that they can ask for medical documentation for, because there's quite a few of them. And then even in situations where you can ask for medical documentation, any of that documentation, it has to be reasonable and limited to confirming the existence of the pregnancy-related limitation and the need for the accommodation. So you can't ask for a full medical history. It's not relevant and it's too intrusive. So can't do that. And then the other thing to consider, moving away from the documentation concept, is that an accommodation should be looked at as an ongoing process. So an accommodation may need to be adjusted over time. It likely will need to be adjusted over time. It can evolve, especially in a situation with pregnancy, which is known to progress into different areas. You have pregnancy, then you have childbirth, then you have recovery. So there may be different types of accommodations that are needed throughout that process. So under both laws, employers have to engage in that individualized interactive process. But as a general rule, the PWFA does put tighter limits on requesting medical information, which really does, I think, reflect the law's intent to reduce unnecessary barriers for pregnant workers to get prompt resolution to their need for accommodation.